Good morning, gang. It's very early in the morning because we've just digesting the Nova Open reveals and roadmap section. I'm joined by a very special guest today, which is producer Kerry, who's very quickly whizzed together some slides for us to have a little look at, and everyone else is indisposed, and I didn't really necessarily feel like having a discussion on my own because it's not much of a discussion. So please welcome Kerry. You're normally someone who sits behind the screen doing all of the presentations in the background. He's going to join me today for a quick little chat about what we've seen.
Yeah,
So
good morning. Quick is definitely the operative word, I think.
yeah, there's not
Fortunately,
necessarily the opportunity to kind of delve too much into things because there's not a huge amount to delve into really. So first things first, this is us. Go and give us a follow over on the Instagrams. My name is John. I'm obviously joined by Kerry, as we've already previously said. It's still very early in the morning here in the UK. Neither of our brains are completely active yet, so we're going to try and get ourselves going. Um, First things first, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. Was that we were promised, Kerry, a roadmap of what was coming for the Horus Heresy setting, games in the Age of Darkness. What did we get?
what we got was is it still a roadmap when there are no destinations, distances, markings, and it's just a map of a road?
Yes. I think it's important for us to firstly reflect on we've seen a roadmap for Horus Heresy previously, didn't we?
So this is last year's roadmap. What we got, I think it came out Warhammer Fest 2023.
Yes.
Phonia had just released as a book. So the first releases were the resin characters for that.
Yeah. So what it did is it gave us a pretty good indication of kind of a relatively kind of fleshed out schedule of what was going to be coming over the course of the sort of next sort of 12 months, really, what we would kind of expect to see, and some specifics. So we had a range of plastic and resin kits, and I think broadly GW was able to kind of stick to this and did pretty well. I think any kind of discrepancies and vagaries were kind of discussed ahead of time, as in, this is what we're likely to see. There were still some sort of vagaries in there, like a Primarch, and that gave us some interesting things to speculate on. New characters and upgrades, more Lords of War, etc. A mystery army release. There's some. What was kind of nice in it was there was some dedicated. You're getting an assault squad. You're getting, you know, a Night Lancer. You're getting another arm mark update, but at the same time, it was vague enough that it was able to kind of continue to fuel the fires of the rumor mill, but also at the same time, you know, give you some specific things to kind of get your teeth into.
It kept those plastic releases in mind. The fact that they said Command Squad is coming next spring, a year in advance, and they hit that goal. We got that release. I think, with the exception of the melee weapons, everything was released. Everything there was released in roughly the time period they said it was going to be.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we want to kind of discuss is, did this make a rod for GW back? Were they too committal with what was coming and times?
I mean, it's difficult to say, obviously, because we don't see behind the GW curtain. We don't
No.
see the business machinations and what's going on. And the melee weapons are a good example. They said they were there. They gave us a bit of notice they weren't going to come. They announced today that we'll see them in the next couple of weeks. So it's a 6 month delay.
Yeah.
But who's to say what caused that delay? Is it shipping issues? Is it rebalancing the timelines? Is it manufacturing issues? Is it the card stock got delayed from China?
Yeah.
There's no way of knowing.
No. The fact of the matter is that trying to give a definitive schedule 12 to 18 months in advance is always going to be different. And you know, we both have roles within our kind of day jobs that have scheduling issues and production issues, and you can understand that it is, whilst you would like to have forecasting done incredibly far in advance. There are so many external factors that affect your ability to deliver upon promises that, and, you know, and there will be an awful lot that are beyond anyone's control. So we want to, I think, first things first, give enormous props to GW for continuing to have a pretty, you know, a pretty fleshed out schedule of releases for Horus Heresy as a setting, especially when we talk about Legiones Imperialis alongside the kind of 28 mil Age of Darkness scale as well. So we want to start off by saying pretty good job. Now, I think what kind of really helped was at the time the Age of Darkness kind of as a core setting within the kind of the GW sphere of kind of, you know, I guess kind of commercial influence was pretty strong still. You know, the release of second edition was still very fresh in people's mind, and this was, you know, a good example of how I'm sure a lot of this stuff was planned out very far in advance, and they were able to kind of release things really consistently. And after years of kind of being in the wilderness of not seeing much for a long periods, we were still able to actually have a lot of stuff that came out. You know, we haven't discussed within any of this any of the, you know, the campaign books and, you know, the other things that kind of come alongside just getting the toys right.
So it's interesting. The article recently talked about how the Mars book has come from the was planned black book for the end of first edition.
Yeah,
How they've really used the content and updated it and made it relevant to where we are now.
yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, that kind of end of first and what kind of we believe existed at that time, obviously, you know, only a few people will be able to kind of confirm that, but there's relatively sort of strong inklings amongst a lot of people that a lot of the content that we're seeing in terms of written content has existed for years, and it's just been kind of not necessarily rehashed, but kind of abridged for the later version of the game. It's provided some really good content that we could have seen 5-6 years ago, but actually now it's much more relevant given the state of the game and how it kind of sits within, you know, kind of GW's kind of commercial hierarchy. I think that from what we understand, that, you know, Heresy is a bigger game than, as we talk about a setting as a whole, and a kind of a bigger part of GW's business than anybody anticipated, which is absolutely fantastic, and can therefore only kind of lead to good things further on down the line. So
The Mars book is a good example because that's something that if that had released at the end of first edition when a tech floor was £8 for a 3-point resin model,
yeah,
a Castellac was 75 quid, that would not have succeeded. But now they've held it back, they've updated it, they've got you got all the plastics and that technology. It's
yeah,
going to be a much more successful
I
concept.
could not agree more. Yeah, no, I think actually in terms of timeframes and stuff as well, there was such a huge hype around the release of the second edition and all the things that could come with it, that I think actually in the kind of, you know, we always want more. That's the difficulty. No matter how much you kind of give people, no matter how much you kind of try and spread things out, people are always going to want stuff quicker. Patience is a commodity that is in very short supply in the world that we live in now. Everyone wants more and everyone wants it yesterday. And obviously, you know, Mechanicum players who are kind of veteran players have had to wait a long time for to see a lot of this stuff. But actually, I think when we talk about the kind of wider context, it's fitted in pretty well in terms of we've had kind of, you know, a major army release pretty regularly when we talk about the time frame from the second edition and the kind of relaunch of Heresy, really. So I think we can kind of forgive.
I'm going to describe it as New Games Workshop because I've been playing, for 18 odd years. But
Yeah,
the New Games Workshop of here's the Heresy Thursday, here's a model, here's what's going to come out at some point. That preview that never used to exist.
no,
It used to be you found out about release the day it went on sale. Like, here's a
yeah,
new model, you
absolutely.
could buy it tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember
Whereas
wondering.
now
Yeah,
that Heresy, as you say, the lack of patience, White Scar Stormseer is a good example of that. That came out on Heresy Thursday
yeah,
and then didn't release and didn't release and didn't release, didn't release. It's like, okay, can release it now, please?
yeah.
We'd never have known about it until the day it went up for sale in the old days.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if we talk about the old days back in sort of 2015, 2016, where we'd have the kind of Forge World Fridays, and all of a sudden it'd be like here's a Phoenix Terminator, or here's a Siege Tyrant, or here's Leviathan. It would just kind of spring up. But now this kind of hype train is constantly being fueled. You know, it's very yeah, it's a tricky one to balance. So let's I think we've looked back. Let's have a little look forwards and address the elephant in the room is the fact that this is not a roadmap. It's got the title of roadmap, but let's be honest, it's unbelievably non-committal in comparison to a previous roadmap that potentially might have been a little bit too committal. So
25% of the space is taken up with what we've had released in the last year. 25%
exactly.
of the space is the logos.
Yeah.
And that leaves half the space with more Mechanicum, which anyone would have put good
Yeah,
guesses on anyway.
It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to you know, to come up with the fact that there's likely to be more Mechanicum. I think even in the picture in the bottom left, you can see a Thanatar Calyx tucked away in the bottom left, I believe. So
Yeah.
would be an easy one to go with. But yeah, basically, I think that there's definitely a consensus here of, you know, keeping in mind that you've never had it so good.
And it's interesting, this is not Heresy exclusive. If you look at the road, they released 4 roadmaps last
Yeah,
night at Nova. So for 40k, Old World, Sigma, and Heresy, and all 4 are this devoiding content.
yeah, yeah. So that strikes me as wanting to be very deliberately non-committal. So the we want to kind of address the biggest elephant in the room, which is the fact that it's an open secret that the 3rd edition of Heresy is coming. Like when it happens, I think when it happens is probably the kind of the bigger um the kind of bigger factor as to why this might be so non-committal. So there is a non-heresy podcast that recently discussed that GW's kind of big financial release this year was a 4th edition of Age of Sigmar, which, you know, Age of Sigmar, whilst being a good game, is a game that I think has struggled somewhat probably in the last kind of 18 months or so. And certainly, I think the release of the Old World has kind of potentially diluted that player base a little bit, and that GW might want a slightly bigger sales bump this year because the Skaven Tide and kind of associated AOS release has probably not necessarily lived up to some of the forecasting, whereas it's believed that Old World has overachieved, and obviously Heresy has been a runaway success commercially in comparison to what GW thought. Now, we don't know any of this for definite, but it's what has been kind of widely reported by people who have fingers in sort of various pies. So, you know, could we see a potentially slightly earlier release of a 3rd edition of Heresy than we might otherwise have seen? Because it's likely to give a bit of a boost in sales. And let's be honest, GW is a huge PLC and it needs to keep shareholders happy above anybody else. It needs to keep its shareholders happy as much. It needs to keep us, the purchasing public, happy. So that might have a bit of a kind of deciding factor on kind of actually how the next 18 months or 15 months of the Age of Darkness as a setting kind of looks, really.
I mean, don't want to talk too much about 3rd edition because we're going to do that elsewhere. But new editions are always that scary prospect. It's for players, we fear change traditionally.
Yeah.
So
We ask for it up until the point where it's here, and then we're like, oh, we don't like change.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the rumors of a new army box set with, you know, new bits and pieces in it have been floating around for a while.
Yeah.
So whether or not that gets held back to be a 3rd edition release box set, or whether it's a big spring splat release like the Mark III box was.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of detail. That's the sort of detail I'd have liked. But
Yeah. I think that's
don't have to nail it down to specific dates or specific contents.
Yeah.
But a little bit more just to tease out going, there is stuff coming.
I kind of agree. I think in the interview that Andy gave, he was clearly very deliberate with the choice of choice of phrasing, the choice of words to sort of placate people and say, oh, there is stuff coming to flesh out all of the existing factions. We're going to probably focus in, it's almost certain that in the next kind of major focus will be on fleshing out the Mechanicum range, and then there is more kind of core stuff coming for the legions, and again broadening out the solar range. And how that, what's also I think was quite interesting was how they kind of more closely tying the product ranges between epic scale and 28mm scale, and sort of saying that we've been able to do a lot more in plastic for epic scale because it exists for 28mm, but likewise if there's stuff that exists in epic scale that doesn't exist in 28mm, that might give us a bit more of an indication as to what's potentially coming down the line for the 28mm scale. The obvious one, I think, in that we've discussed previously and has kind of been around the track for a long time, being the plastic rapier kit. The rapier's got a redesign for epic, so it would make sense that a redesign would come for 28mm Age of Darkness scale. I think that would be almost kind of a no-brainer, really, if you're kind of designing these kits alongside each other, scaling them up and scaling them down, which would be sensible. But I think that I personally, and I don't know any of this for certain, but I think a lot of what we might see in terms of new miniatures coming forward for next year will be tied into when and if a new edition releases.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to see them doing anything but that big release. If we do get a new edition, that will be the big release. Whether or not that includes completely brand new things. Like we have Kratos was the big tentpole for second edition. That was a brand new thing that never existed before.
Yeah.
Whether or not do we get new things, or are we just going to continue that port? You said Rapier is a great example. The obvious gaps in the line, our Sakaran turrets, those were redesigned for Imperialis, but the plasma Sakaran turrets now sideways.
Yeah.
Imperialis, whether or not that's designed deliberately for the scale to make it more manufacturable, don't know, but that's what like I said, I like to have seen a roadmap. For me, a roadmap is a really useful tool to say, here's what's coming.
Yeah.
A vague idea of what's coming to, because I want Sakarans. I want Sakaran variants.
Yeah.
I want bikes.
Yeah.
White nasty bikes. Or if you said plastic bikes are coming 6 months' time, 9 months' time, I said, cool, I'll wait.
Yeah.
Without giving me any indication that they're ever actually going to come, I'll go, okay, I'll go talk to someone, print them.
I wonder if this is. I think there are two things to consider. Is that have there lessons to be learned internally at GW and their scheduling for being too specific in the past, and therefore kind of having to try and stick to things in lieu of looking a little bit silly or kind of letting people down and stirring up kind of ill feeling. But also as well, like we were kind of promised a roadmap and we've not received a roadmap. I mean, the roadmap is tanks.
Something new every month in tanks. Obviously, something new every month does not mean a new plastic kit every month. It could be this month your release is this new Imperial Fist character we've never heard of before.
Correct.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So
it might be the fact that a new release might be a legacies unit or a exemplary battles unit, for instance. I think it's deliberately very, very, very vague just to sort of see what kind of comes out in the wash from other systems and how that ties into or kind of affects other game schedules, kind of release kind of release schedules. So okay, so there was a 5-minute interview with Andy and Adam Trope. So let's have a little look at kind of what was kind of talked about there. So the melee weapon set will be revealed in September. So
so Andy said in the interview soon, the actual Warhammer Com article is where some of his details come from as well.
Yeah.
That says revealed in the next few weeks. So as usual, difference between revealed and released is still a thing, but hopefully we'll see that soon.
Yeah. So in the near future, we'll have more core marines in plastic continuing. So, I think core marines would likely be kind of troop choices. We might get I would like to see something like a recon squad kit, for instance, because the recon marines that exist currently, you're either kit bashing kind of new plastics, or you're on those really tiny Mark IV four-rod resins, which are comically small now compared to the rest of the range. So
Breaches are my obvious one.
yeah, breaches are
You've got the
very
plastic Mark III, rumored Mark II.
yeah,
Breach upgrade kit seems like a no-brainer.
absolutely. Interesting. So Legion specific ranges are planned, but certainly not kind of necessarily on the horizon yet, which I think is really, really interesting. So, in terms of there's not necessarily we had a quick kind of little rattle of people or rattle of our own brains this morning just to sort of see if we could figure out any kind of obvious gaps. But if you kind of have got an idea of anything that you might think is missing, then let us know down in the comments. But these specific ranges planned, so that doesn't necessarily mean that stuff's going to port over to plastic. It might be the fact that there are new books coming that introduce new units into it. There are still some legions that even after kind of a dozen years of the heresy existing are still struggling for like additional interesting kind of flavorful like legion specific units. I don't think it necessarily means that we're going to get like plastic siege tyrants or like plastic dawnbringers necessarily, but it could mean that. But I think I'd say it's likely to be yeah, potentially some new stuff coming through. Again, we know that they are still going to be utilizing resin, so I personally don't see this as we're porting stuff over to plastic. I think it might be the fact that we'll finally see the long-awaited Iron Warriors and Salamanders characters, for instance. Obviously, I'm holding out a lot of hope for one of those. But what does this kind of mean to you?
Again, tricky one. I would hope that plastics is going to be difficult because of the way it's very niche. You're already in heresy, so you're already niche. You go
Yeah,
right. Here's a dedicated plastic kit that is siege tyrants. Is
yeah,
oh, from Ultramarines axe
who's
shield
right?
dudes. Yeah,
Yeah,
A box of Suzerains. Like that's a really cool idea, but
yeah,
it's going to have such a niche appeal.
yeah,
It's never going to pay for the cost of plastic injection molding.
yeah. It's
So
not.
unless they could have a box set
Yeah,
that somehow this is a box that somehow builds you an Ultramarine unit or a Blood Angel unit or a Dark Angel unit, so some kind of multifunctional box, but upgrade kits seem the most likely way.
yeah. I would say. I mean, I think it's very also it's very difficult as well. Like if you're merchandising a store and you're going to be encouraged to stock a suzerain kit where you might sell a handful a year as opposed to a Mark 6 assault marine kit where you might sell a handful a week. Like it's going to be very, very difficult from existing like Warhammer branded stores and also kind of third party retailers to actually stock a lot of this stuff. I think that I personally don't necessarily see Legion specific plastic ranges coming apart from maybe the occasional character that we might see in like a big box release like we did with the Age of Darkness core box. And even then, one was painted as a Sons of Horus and one was painted in Imperial Fist, but they weren't necessarily kind of marketed as a Fist character and a Sons of Horus character.
You have to go back to Araman and
Yeah,
what's his name, Hands from the
Aaron,
Prospero box to the last Legion specific plastic units.
yeah, yeah. I personally, I think this is nice that we're going to see fleshed out kind of Legion ranges, but porting over to plastic, I know people have kind of wanted, but I just don't see it happening personally. Um, Extra weight for Solar Orcs and Mechanicum, that's kind of a bit of a no-brainer, really, especially the Mechanicum. I mean, we've got, a handful of core units, but there's still so much stuff in there that they could look to do. Obviously, like, the Thanatar Calyx is an obvious one because the Thanatar kit exists. We might see plastic Domitars, we might see, which I think would be kind of good, plastic Karaknos, now that we've got the kind of Triaros kit would be an easy one to do. I suspect that plastic Krios is probably something that would sell well enough to warrant porting over to plastic.
One I think would be interesting to see is the Altax. I
Yeah,
pronounced that wrong. Seeing as that is, it's never had a model.
yeah, that's actually never.
They left it in the book.
Yeah,
They killed everything else but didn't have a model, but they left that one in the book.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's potentially a little Easter egg for us to see. And again, I think that given what Andy said in the interview as well, with regards to um, the epic scale and 28 mil kind of looking to sort of share ranges going forwards, I think it looks to be kind of something that might kind of form some of their decision making. I think it's relatively, it wouldn't be too amiss to say if there's stuff that is existing in like the 8 mil scale that it doesn't exist for 28 mil, we're going to see that. And likewise, if there's stuff for 28 mil coming, that's going to come for epic scale. So I think that, Solar Orcs is almost certainly going to be a super heavy. Some, like a Bane Blade, Bane Hammer, Stormhammer kit would be,
The Solar Orc style will be extra trim.
yeah,
Baneblade has been
that's been,
banging around for a while as an idea. Or Ogrins,
yeah,
that's
and an
one.
Ogren kit as well. Yeah, I think if it's existing in the Legiones Imperialis, Solar Orcs range is much more fleshed out than the plastic. So I think it would not be too much of a stretch to kind of look at this 8 mil kit and think, okay, well, what are we going to see in 28 mil and vice versa? 2025 will see new plastic weapon options for existing walkers. So I would imagine that would be a uh, a Deredeo upgrade kit would be the easy one to kind of look at, just to give you the las cannon volkite kind of carronade as well.
Yeah, that's the only one I could spring to mind that we've got rules for that's missing, unless they're going to introduce new weapons for some platforms.
Yeah,
But
I personally think it would be an easier option to kind of just, like I said, sort of, take some of the existing resin options and put them into plastic, much like they did with the Leviathan, etc. So that's what I see in my own head. But if you've got something different, then let us know down in the comments. Um, we'll see mechs, sister sites, custodies for Legiones Imperialis at some point, but the focus is on Marines and Solar for now. I think that's kind of fine. I wonder again how much of this will be dependent on what they're planning for 28 mil and also kind of how Legiones Imperialis is selling. We shall see. And there's a major reveal for Imperialis soon. So I don't know if that's tied into the previous kind of comment that there's going to be new factions available for Legiones Imperialis. I think that a a book similar to the incoming mech book for 28 mil would be an easy-ish kind of option.
they just Imperials have just had Talon
Yeah,
released 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
yeah.
most. So it's not going to be a new campaign book yet, I'd imagine.
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't have thought so, but at the same time, it would be an easy way of kind of introducing a new faction. So I personally think that we'll see some new factions. The game is still way, way, way too early for a non-mainline game to be even thinking about a new edition or a rules rewrite. Perhaps we'll see kind of a bigger fact. But to be honest with you, like I don't really hear from anyone that the rule set for LI needs any kind of updating really. Um,
I hear people calling out for a second edition Titanicus, but whether or not that's just been left in the dust now.
I would have said so. I think that, let's be honest, I think it's taken Necromunda 5 years to get a soft rewrite of the rule set with Hive Secundus. And that, by all accounts, still really, really, really sells really, really well. And it's really, I mean, it must be because it's so well supported. Um, and I think that those kind of skirmish games are always slightly easier to kind of play around with a little bit. But I would be surprised if we never saw a second edition for Imperialis, given that it is, I think, always been marketed as kind of a secondary game alongside the kind of mainline stuff. But for me, the biggest thing from the reveal was that Heresy Thursday returns next month, which is
Loads
great.
of
Yeah, they said it would take a break and it would be back, and fair play, it's coming back. So it was always a nice, interesting one for us waking up every Thursday morning thinking, what are we going to get this month? Um,
I'm expecting the first series Thursday will be said melee weapons.
yes, correct. That's I think is a given, but we shall hopefully see some stuff going through soon. I suspect for the next kind of few months it is going to be melee weapons and additional Mechanicum units, maybe with the Solar Orc stuff kind of thrown in there for good measure as well. So what we're kind of saying is, yeah, you know, don't not go out and buy stuff because there's new stuff on the horizon, but at the same time, you know, be a little bit cautious. That I think Games Workshop is being deliberately vague with what they're kind of putting out there. But for my, I think a lot of people will be waking up this morning thinking that they've been sold a bit of a pup this time. I personally think it's more sensible to be a little bit more fluid with how things are being planned and when stuff coming. I think that the re-release of Heresy Thursday is going to be is probably the most important bit of news, because it will enable, you know, it will enable GW to be a little bit more kind of active in terms of how they might change things around depending on kind of what the mood is amongst the player base, or more importantly amongst kind of how things sit in their release schedule and kind of with the other external factors that affect things like production, the ability to get stuff to market. So any kind of closing thoughts before we all head off?
I think like many people, I woke up, I looked at my phone, I looked at the roadmap and went, yeah, that's disappointing.
Yes,
So I think that is everyone else who feels like that. Yes, you're not alone. I think
yeah,
that is the universal feeling. You look at the comments on Facebook on the Games Workshop community posts, and it
yeah,
is universally negative
yeah.
across all systems. So,
I think
but
yeah,
the thing to take out of it is the future is bright. There is stuff coming. It's just we would have liked. We're not being abandoned. It's been a dark few months. We had an Xbox. We've not really had much for a while now. The future is bright. Stuff is coming. We just haven't quite got
yeah,
the clarity we wanted.
yeah, exactly that. I think the difficulty is I think if it had been marketed as we're going to have a chat with Andy about the future of Age of Darkness and the setting of Horus Heresy, I think it would have been slightly better received than we're going to tell you exactly what's coming and give you a pretty good idea when, which I think is exactly what people are expecting, because that's what we saw last time. So we want to just kind of, you know, pick through the bones a little bit of what was said and kind of what our thoughts and feelings are. Yeah, don't expect anything. You know, I think we put up a post on the Instagram yesterday just asking for people's, you know, what were people expecting to see, and I think everyone expected to have some specific info given of what we've seen previously. I think this is potentially a little bit of a lesson for GW to learn in terms of um, you know, over promising and under delivering, which I think is not necessarily something that is they're kind of alien to. So but we're interested to know kind of what your thoughts are about what we've seen today, and what you're hoping to see out of these releases kind of going forwards. Really, we always love speculation and conjecture and rumor and scuttlebutt, so post it in the comments below. Obviously keep tagging your miniatures, #Heresy on Instagram, keep liking, subscribing, drop us a comment and share the video around. If you've got any questions, queries, anything you want to rant and rave about, then fire over an email to heresyhammer30k@gmail.com, and we'll potentially look at include that in the next community show that we do next month. And lastly, as well, if you want lots of additional heresy content, hours, tens, maybe even getting over for 100 hours of additional content over the Patreon, which you can get involved in for just £3 a month, that'd be wonderful, and we appreciate your support. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you very, very shortly. Right, take care, Kerry. Thank you very much for joining this morning.
No problem.
And, yeah, we'll speak to you all soon. I'll be good.
See you. Bye.
Bye.